Can a budget-friendly pencil really compete with the most expensive color pencils in the world? These new color pencils cost a fraction of Prismacolor, Polychromos, and Luminance. But can they actually compare? I wanted to find that out, so I swatched all 72 colors, tried them against the big three, and put them through some serious testing. Let's see how they did. Now let's take a very close look at the quality and feel of the colored pencils first, so that I can give you my honest opinion on how they perform. The pencils themselves feel solid and professional, with smooth wooden barrels and a clean design. They have a glossy finish and golden accents that immediately reminded me of high-end pencils like Polychromos or Luminance. Honestly, just from the outside, they look and feel just as premium. What's interesting is that the Prismacolors I ordered for this test and used for the very first time didn't look nearly as refined. Of course, appearance isn't the most important factor, but it's definitely something you notice. The Ohuhu Halawas, on the other hand, made a much stronger first impression. Still, let's take a quick look at the prices first, to understand where these pencils are positioned. The Halawa set costs around 40 euros. They're aimed more at students and hobbyists than at the fine art market. While a comparable Prismacolor or Luminance set can cost 3 times as much, or even more. So the value here is really nice, especially considering the range. You get everything from delicate pastels to deep, saturated tones. It feels like a very complete set. And right off the bat, I really liked how transparent Ohuhu was about these pencils. Their product team actually told me that in terms of pigmentation, the Halawas reach about 80% of what Prismacolors can do. And I love that they're not overselling it, not pretending it's exactly the same. But for the price point, it's honestly impressive. And before we go any further, yes, this video is sponsored by them. But as always, I only work with brands I genuinely love and use all the time. Ohuhu is honestly one of my favorites. I work with their markers constantly, and honestly, those can absolutely hold their own against the most expensive brands on the market. Therefore, I'm really curious to see what their color pencils can do. And by the way, I've linked the Halawa color pencils down below in the description, in case you want to check them out or pick them up yourself. And if you'd like to dive deeper into mixed media and how you can combine markers with watercolors and color pencils like I do in this video, you might want to check out my Patreon, where I have over 200 tutorials waiting for you, covering everything from watercolor and colored pencils to markers and how to combine them. I'm always adding new content, including studies like the one I'm working on in this video, and you'll also find free material guides to help you choose the right tools for your own art. So if you want to level up your skills and explore new techniques, definitely check it out. So with that said, let's jump right into today's review, starting with the color red. The Halawa set actually has a really wide range of reds, and you can see here that there are so many different shades to choose from. For this test I picked a very intense orange red, just to see how strong the pigment looks on paper. With the Prismacolor set I only had a few options available, so I had to go with a slightly darker red. To balance it out, I added a few darker reds from the Ohuhu set, so you can still get a fair comparison. And honestly, in terms of intensity, I couldn't see any difference at all. The Halawa red looked just as vibrant as the others. Especially with these deeper tones, the coverage was strong, and the blending potential is definitely there. Next, I wanted to see how the white pencils perform when layered over red. So I created a little gradient from light red to dark red in each brand. For Halawa, I used orange into a darker red. For Prismacolor, I did the same, and for Polychromos as well. With Luminance, I don't own the full set. They're honestly just way too expensive, so I only had a dark red to work with. But it still gave me a fair comparison. When I layered the white on top, I noticed something interesting. The blending properties of the Halawa pencils were just as smooth as with Prismacolor and Luminance. The colors really meld together nicely. But in terms of coverage, Halawa wasn't quite as strong. With Prismacolor and Luminance, the white shows up very opaque, while with Halawa it's a little lighter, a little more transparent. And that actually matches what the product team told me, that Halawa's pigmentation is around 80% compared to Prismacolor. You can really see it here in the white coverage. Polychromos, on the other hand, don't really work for this kind of test at all. Because they're oil-based, white basically has no covering power. You can layer it as much as you want, but it won't lighten the red underneath. That's just the nature of oil-based pencils. Now, why include them at all then? Some of you might be asking now. Well, I've seen a few videos on YouTube claiming that the Halawas are on the same level as Polychromos. But that doesn't really make sense because they are two very different types of pencil. Wax and oil-based pencils. The Halawa, Prismacolor and Luminance pencils are wax-based. That means they feel softer, creamier, and they give you strong coverage right away. They're also perfect for blending, because wax can create a natural bloom on the surface, and I actually use that all the time to blend my colors smoothly together. It's one of the big advantages of wax-based pencils. Polychromos, on the other hand, are oil-based. They're much harder, which means they don't give you instant coverage in the same way, but you can sharpen them to an incredibly fine point. That makes them amazing for details and crisp, precise lines in a portrait. So that's why I threw the Polychromos in here, to show how different they are from wax-based pencils overall. For example, I like using wax-based pencils to create a smooth wax layer on the paper, which reduces the pencil grain, like you can see here in this test portrait, where I added orange to her cheekbones. Polychromos, on the other hand, are perfect for fine details, adding precise contours or outlines, or for giving a subtle, transparent tint to an area without completely covering every color underneath. Polychromos are also harder and don't crumble as much, so these are really two different kinds of color pencils for different purposes. But I'm getting a bit off track here, because I actually wanted to test the pigmentation and blending properties. And overall, Halawa blended just as well as the big brands, but the pigmentation of white was a bit weaker. Still, the performance was very solid. Next up is black, and here I'd say the Halawa pencils perform at about 80% compared to the strongest brands. If you look at Luminance and Prismacolor, their blacks are just a little more intense and a bit deeper in tone. Halawa and Polychromos are very close to each other in this area. Both give you a solid dark tone, but not quite as deep as Luminance or Prismacolor. With Halawa, you can also see the higher wax content in the core. It gives the black a slight sheen, and because of that, it doesn't look quite as dark on the page. Polychromos, being oil-based, naturally have a different look too. The black is strong, but also a touch more transparent. Finally, let's take a look at yellow and blue. They show the same qualities as before, vibrant, intense tones with really nice mid-range colors that actually come quite close to Prismacolor and Luminance. And after all that technical talk, I hope I didn't lose you completely. If you're still here, congrats! You're officially a color pencil expert. Now, let's take a look at the portrait. For this portrait, I chose something really sweet. A girl with 2 sugar gliders, butterflies, and a little red dragonfly. Why a red dragonfly, you ask? Well, if you look closely at the box, you'll notice the same little detail. That red dragonfly isn't just decoration. It's actually the crimson Hawaiian damselfly, a rare and endangered species that lives in Halawa Valley on Molokai Island in Hawaii, depicted by Ohuhu artist Afeng. This little dragonfly is part of the valley's lush ecosystem of waterfalls, rainforests, and rivers, and it became the symbol for the Halawa pencil series. So I thought it would be such a nice touch to include it in my artwork as well. And I'm starting this portrait, as usual, with a watercolor base. And I just wanted to give you a little preview of how it's going to look. I'm beginning with the eye, and then I start adding color to the cheeks and the rest of the face using the Halawa pencils, right on top of the watercolor layer. What I noticed is that since these pencils aren't super opaque, they actually work really well for that first layer of color. You can press a bit harder without adding too much pigment, which is actually a nice advantage. Now, I'm not finishing this portrait in this video because there's a little secret about it. I'm using a very special kind of paper, and I'll talk more about that in another video coming next year. That's when you'll also get to see the finished portrait. So for now, I'm just showing you how the pencils perform. And if you're wondering whether they work well on other papers too, yes, I've tested that, and they perform just as nicely. What I found interesting is that even with the softer Halawa pencils, you can still achieve very fine lines if you build it up the right way. For example, I first laid down a light layer with a skin tone, which created a wax base on the paper. Then, when I went back in with darker colors, I was able to draw very precise eyelashes on top. Using black, I could get those fine, sharp strokes to really define the lashes. If you go directly with a dark pencil over a raw watercolor wash, the lines aren't quite as fine. They spread a little more into the paper's texture. But once there's already a wax layer underneath, the lines come out much cleaner. These are the kind of small details you only notice while working, but they make a big difference in how you handle the pencils on this paper. Now, when it comes to outlines, Halawa is softer than Polychromos, so it's not their natural strength, but it's definitely possible. You just need to be a little more careful. For example, I drew extremely fine eyelashes using the Halawa pencils, but I had to sharpen them very carefully and work with a lighter pressure. Out of the box, the tips are not quite as sharp as harder pencils, simply because the cores are softer. The good news is they actually sharpen really well. Across the whole set, not one pencil broke on me while sharpening, which is a great result. So yes, you can do outlines, you just have to keep in mind that they're wax-based and adjust your technique accordingly. When I created my artwork with these pencils, I really noticed that the blending is excellent, and you can achieve beautiful effects with the Halawa Black as well. Honestly, you only really see the difference when you compare them side by side like this. For most people, it wouldn't even be noticeable. But since I've worked a lot with Luminance and Polychromos pencils, especially for creating soft transitions in portraits, which is really what I specialize in, I tend to notice those subtle differences right away. And with the Halawa pencils, I'd say they hold up really well for their price range. They're great for students or anyone still building their skills, and even for more experienced artists, they can be a nice option to have on hand. If you're aiming for perfectly smooth tonal transitions though, I'd still recommend mixing them with a few higher grade pencils. The good thing is, you don't always need every single color to be perfect from the same brand. What I often do in my own work is mix and match. So for black and white, it can make sense to invest in the more expensive pencils, and for the hundreds of midtones that you don't use as often, a more affordable brand with a wide range is absolutely perfect. So to wrap this up, I can honestly recommend the Halawa pencils with a clear conscience, especially for their price point. If you already own a complete set of Luminance or Prismacolor, you probably don't need these. But if you only have a few colors, or if your main set is something like Polychromos, or maybe you've only worked with cheaper pencils so far, then this is a fantastic option. I'll personally keep using them, especially for colors I don't usually have in my other sets. I actually enjoy that the application is a little lighter. It's not always about having the most intense pigment. Sometimes a softer layer is exactly what you need, and you still get that wax surface that blends beautifully. The range also includes a lot of gorgeous pastels and skin tones, which makes it very versatile. So overall, 100% recommendation from me. For the price, this set is an absolute win. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Halawa pencils. You can find all the links in the description and in the pinned comment if you want to give them a try. And if you're wondering how this portrait ends up looking, stay tuned, that video's coming soon. Well, soonish, probably next year. Okay, I've been rambling about my favorite pencil features for the last 13 minutes. Now I want to hear about yours. What do you love most in a colored pencil, and why? Tell me in the comments, and always remember, don't drink your painting water. And if you did, congratulations, you're officially one of us. See you next time.